telewebinar, how to build the roadmap for the best migration path from 2G and 3G. According to RCR Wireless, there are more than 80 million existing 3G devices on North American networks. However, with the arrival of 5G, mobile network operators are currently sunsetting 3G networks to increase capacity on their LTE networks and expand 5G networks. Join us and learn what the complexity of the 3G sunset means for your IoT devices, what each LTE migration path is and which ones are the best for certain applications and use cases, and how voice, mobility, latency, power consumption, and other dimensions will need to be evaluated to decide the best path forward. Just before we get started, we would like to understand what best describes your migration project away from 2G or 3G. So if you could, please take just a second to fill out the poll question, which you'll see on your screen now. Thank you. I would also like to encourage our audience to check out the resources section in the upper right-hand corner of your screen for some additional information on today's topic. Also, feel free to ask questions. We will follow up with you at the conclusion of the webinar. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Adam Cousin, Telit's Senior Technical Specialist, and I'm pleased to lead the discussion here. Today we will explore how to manage the transition from 2G and 3G to the latest LTE technologies. Cellular technology keeps evolving. With the arrival of 5G, mobile network operators are currently sunsetting 2G and 3G networks to increase capacity on their LTE infrastructures, with onward expansion to 5G networks. Sunsetting 3G is more complicated than 2G, as the standard applies application speeds from basic 384 kilobits per second right up to 42 megabits per second. Nevertheless, these 3G devices must transition to LTE to continue operation, and the timeline for 3G sunsets makes getting these migration paths urgent. For businesses, there are multiple paths available for 2G and 3G migration. This includes narrowband IoT, LTE Cat-M, LTE Cat-1 and LTE Cat-4. Looking forward to 5G with new radio RedCap will play a crucial role in 3G migration planning. The transition will enable you to run your IoT devices on faster, more efficient 4G and 5G networks over the long term. I'm joined today by Ken Bednas, VP Application Engineering. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Adam.
And by Marco Stracuzzi, Head of Product Marketing. Hi, Marco.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Ken. Glad to be here.
So let's dive in. So Ken, you're in the US. You guys have already been through the 2G sunset. What does the complexity of 2G and 3G sunsets mean for IoT devices?
Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge, Adam, for the industry here. I mean, there's still millions and millions of IoT devices using these two technologies out there, 2G and 3G. And when we talk about sunset, we talk about the networks actually going away. What happened a couple of years ago was one of the MNOs in the U.S. sunsetted their 2G network, but it gave a false sense of hope to 2G users out there. What happened was there's two 2G networks in the U.S., and so when one was sunset, some of the devices started roaming on the other networks. So the full impact of the initial 2G sunset by one operator was not really felt by the industry. So there's this false sense of hope out there that 3G and 2G sunset doesn't really mean that networks are going away when they are. And so when this day comes in the next year, when both of the MNOs complete the 2G and 3G sunset, there's going to be millions of devices that will no longer operate. So it's really important for device integrators to start planning their replacement plans and really figure out what the next step for them is and what technology they should be using in the future. Another very interesting point on the 3G sunset is related to voice support. Many of the initial LTE products out there that supported voice did not support VoLTE. They did not support 4G voice, but they supported 3G voice. So they were like non-standalone modules. They used 4G LTE for data and 3G for voice. And so once they sunset 3G, those devices will no longer support voice capabilities. So when we talk about 2G and 3G sunsets, we are going to see the effects also on 4G devices.
Right, okay. So the effects aren't necessarily felt widespread immediately. People might start seeing devices maybe falling off the network in some regions and other regions not, and this can be down to MNO by MNO changes. So very interesting, very interesting. So Marco, what should customers consider with the migration path? What technology is better for certain applications and use cases?
So depending on the target use case, there are multiple LTE flavors available today that can be considered when migrating from legacy 2G and 3G to longer-term cellular technologies. The latest 3GPP standards specifically designed for IoT devices are LTM and narrowband IoT. They are optimized for low power consumption and also for optimal coverage even in indoor environment like deep inside buildings. They also are forward compatible with 5G. However, LTM and narrowband IoT are not the perfect fit for all use cases. In fact, narrowband IoT cannot support voice communications. It's a data-only technology and cannot support mobility either, specifically the cellular and over mechanism. LTM is also somehow limited in the data speed. So, for example, it's not the best fit for applications like video streaming that require higher bandwidth. So, for those use cases, the minimum common denominator technology that is available in all LTE networks worldwide is LTE Category 1 or Category 4 if higher speed is required. Category 1 is not as optimized as LTM and narrowband IoT when it comes to power consumption, for example, but it supports voice, it supports data, and it's a mature technology that is available almost everywhere. While the other limitation of LTM and narrowband IoT is that they are new technologies. So they are already available in some parts of the world, like in the US where Ken lives. But in other parts of the world, they are being rolled out by operators as we speak. And maybe they are not available on a national scale yet. So it's likely that Cat 1 and Cat 4 that are LTE technologies and not 5G ready will be around for at least another, I would say, 10 years almost everywhere. So there's no urgency to move away from LTE to 5G yet. But it's worthwhile mentioning that 3GPP has already started the definition of a new 5G standard to serve those mid-speed use cases that are today served by Cat 1 and Cat 4. The name of the standard is 5G NR, New Radio Red Cap, reduced capabilities. It's not frozen yet, so it will take some time before we see it available on the network and also on the device side. It will take another at least 2 to 3 years. So you see multiple options, but really today it comes down to LTM or narrowband IoT, specifically optimized for IoT, but maybe not available everywhere, and Cat 1, Cat 4 that are a good fit for those devices that really need truly global coverage. Think of a tracker that needs to go inside vehicles that are moving around across multiple countries, or still a tracker that needs to go into a pallet that is shipped to different continents. And so you must be able to track it wherever it lands.
Okay, perfect. So it's a complicated situation. There isn't one simple answer to any of this, really. And it really does come down to region by region as to exactly what's required. So how should enterprises choose what technology to move to?
Following up on what we have just discussed, you can understand that the choice of the best technology is really dependent on the technical requirements of the application and the technical capabilities of the technology. But not only that, it's a trade-off between technical assessment and availability of that technology in the countries of deployment. Let's take another example, a connected elevator. It doesn't need high speed because there's not a lot of data to be transmitted over the air. But it must be able to make a voice call to a control center in case of emergency. So looking at the technical requirements, LTM is the best technology. It supports a decent data speed, and it can support voice by the standard. However, it really depends also on the geographical markets where the elevator must be installed. If the elevator goes into US or even into, I don't know, Switzerland, there's LTM coverage in those countries, and there is support for voice over LTM. So all good. But if the elevator goes into countries where there's no LTM, like Italy, or a country where there is LTM, like France, but operators haven't activated yet the voice over LTM, then again, the choice falls on Cat 1. So you can understand it's really a mix, a combination of technical capabilities of the technology and the availability of the technology or of a specific feature for that technology in the countries where the deployment has to happen.
Right, so yet more complexity. So integration shouldn't just look at what the capabilities of the technology are. They should also look to their local MNOs to ensure that those capabilities are matched before they decide on the technology to deploy. It isn't always as easy as it seems. So thanks, Marco. So Ken, how do businesses evaluate voice, mobility, latency, power consumption, all these factors to decide the best path?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think understanding the requirements are extremely important. Marco just talked about all the different technologies that are out there and available today. So really understanding what's important. Is your voice device, is voice really important? Voice quality? Is its battery life? Is it size of the product? Data speeds? What's really important? What are the key selling points for that device are extremely important. Making the technology decision is one of the most important decisions a company's going to have to make, and it can ensure success or ensure failure. And so it's really important to take a look at all available technologies. When people were designing legacy devices with 2G and 3G, it was easy. There was a single 2G module that supported worldwide deployments, and all the operators around the world supported 2G. Every 2G radio supported voice and data and SMS. It's much different nowadays. When you start getting into 4G and 5G, there's a lot of different technologies that are focused on different use cases. So really understanding which one's going to meet your requirements the best is extremely important. And some of the things we see sometimes is people get really narrow-minded. They want to solve their problem today. And so a lot of times they undersize the module capabilities or the cellular technology that they choose. They may select something that's good for data rates today, but when they want to have some additional value-added services and start transmitting maybe pictures or video rather than just, some basic data communications, they can't do it with the technology they selected. So one of the lessons learned is don't undersize the data pipe or the cellular technology that you're going to decide on. The other thing that's really important nowadays is really forward-looking. When we had 2G and 3G out there, like I said, it was very simple using cell phone technologies for IoT. But as we move forward to 4G and 5G, there's a lot more to plan for. You have to really take into account for security. Security is a huge topic. FOTA for firmware over there updating. One thing that's extremely important is the ability to go and update your units over time to ensure that they're operating properly with all the different new network technologies that are being deployed. And then also device management. It's more important than ever to be able to go out there and communicate and control those devices in the field.
I guess this is all part of the long-term evolution, the LTE. These networks are going to be evolving for the long term. It's exactly in the name, right? So if I was a business owner, what should I do now if I know my business is likely to be affected by the 3G shutdown? Are there steps that businesses can take to future-proof their investment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key now is really flexibility. Now that 2G and 3G are going away, let's take a fresh look at it. How do we create a platform that's very flexible? Marco just did a great job describing how all technologies for 4G and 5G are not available everywhere. So we want to create a very flexible design to allow us to switch directions. Typically, the mobile network operators really plan their network evolutions, right? It's very clear that 4G is going to be available for these 20 years or these 15 years, and then 5G is going to be available. So a lot of times it's very well thought out, very well planned. But there's also times where network operators make a decision, then change that decision, and people get caught with designs that they cannot deploy. So one example was in Japan when NTT Docomo, they launched a narrowband IoT network, and less than 1 year later, they turned it off. So it left some of these device integrators stranded. So what do? And so when I talk about flexibility, I'm talking about getting into a platform or getting into a design where you can easily change directions and supports multiple technologies. So at Telit, for example, we offer some different family of modules. We have a 910 family and a 310 family where we have multiple different cellular technologies within that family. So you can do a design one time, and then depending on where you deploy, you can select the right appropriate technology. If an MNO switches directions on you, you're not caught. You can easily pivot in a different direction. And I think one of the things that COVID-19 has really taught us is you have to be ready to pivot. You have to be ready to change directions, right? And if you're not ready to change directions quickly, you're going to get caught and have some tough times for your IoT deployment. So flexibility is extremely important. And I think with the 3G sunset, it's a good time to reset what's important for a next generation design.
That's good advice. Really good. So don't back one horse. Try and back as many as you can in one go. So what would be the first step in creating a migration plan for integrators?
It really goes back to what we were talking about earlier, understanding the key requirements. Which cellular technology? We already covered that topic, right? There's a lot of different ones to choose from. Is this a global or regional deployment? What are the data speed requirements? But beyond that, it's the new items that we want to focus on, right? How do we ensure security? How do we ensure SIM management? How do we make sure that we can go out and control these devices? I think one of the things going back to COVID, a lot of devices that didn't have device management, didn't have firmware over the air capabilities, really got stuck. You take the home security business, for example. They had to go in and change some of these devices and update them to new settings, but they were not allowed in people's homes during COVID, during the pandemic. And so if you didn't have the proper device management and firmware over the air updating skills or capabilities, you'd be really stuck. And so what's really important is to make sure you're forward thinking, make sure you revisit your plans. Technology is continuing to evolve. Marco talked about how 3GPP Release 17 is going to introduce 5G reduced capabilities. And so when we do our next generation design, we just can't do it and stop. We have to continue to revisit that design with the flexibility that we talked about. So revisit that design every year to make sure we're using the most appropriate technology that's available, because there will be new technologies, and some of the features in these new technologies can be game changers, and you don't want to get caught a couple generations behind. And so the focus here is, how do we, instead of creating a platform that you deploy one time, how do we evolve that platform over time?
Gotcha. Okay. So Marco, please assure us that we will get some sort of advance notice of a particular region being shut down. How will customers be alerted of the transition? Surely these networks can't just kill 2G and 3G overnight, right?
No. So let's say there are two main cases. If a company is already a customer of a mobile network operator, so if they are already sourcing SIM cards and buying connectivity from an operator, they will get a formal notification about the operator sunset plans, official sunset plans, and usually operators give at least a couple of years of advance notification before they actually shut down a technology in their network. But there is also the case of a company that maybe is not buying any connectivity themselves, because in the supply chain, maybe they are not the ones buying connectivity. This might be demanded to their end customer. They are the ones doing only the device. But still, they need to make sure they do the device in the right way, supporting the right long-term technologies. So in this case, or even if a company, think also about the company that is buying the connectivity, but they want to enter new regions, new geographical markets where they don't know what are the plans of the operators because they don't have a relationship with the operators there yet. So in this second case, I think the best way to stay informed about the latest developments in the cellular networks around the world is to ask for the support of a trusted, experienced partner that is in close contact with not only the operators, but also the infrastructure vendors and in general all the stakeholders in the industry, like also the standardization bodies like 3GPP. And this is exactly how we at Telit are trying to provide value to our clients because we talk every day with all these people. We monitor what's happening, what technologies are going away, what new technologies are coming up, and we can really be a trusted advisor to help in this difficult choices of the technology.
So it's hugely complex. And what you need in a situation like this, as you say, is a trusted advisor. It's good to go to one place to get the answer rather than having to forge dozens and dozens of relationships with chipset vendors, module providers and connectivity providers around the world. So it's good that we can provide this level of service. But based on this, how do these shutdowns differ geographically? Is it geographically? Are they happening at the same rate globally? Is it by MNO and MNO? It's important.
I would love if it could be at the same time globally. It would be much easier for everybody, but it's not. So network sunset strategies are very different in different countries, and I can tell you even within the same country, they can be very different from one operator to the other. Historically, there have been countries like the US, and you know it very well, but also Australia or some Asian countries like Korea and Japan that have been very fast in moving away from older cellular technologies like 2G and 3G and jumping on the latest cellular technologies. In fact, in those countries, 2G is almost gone. And in the US, we are approaching also the first 3G sunset on February 2022. So on the other hand, there are other regions like Europe, Adam, where you and me live, where there are still a lot of 2G and 3G networks that are alive. And especially when we talk about IoT devices, there is really a large installed base of IoT devices that are using 2G because they are simple devices, they must be low cost, they don't need a lot of data. Maybe they need to make some voice calls, so 2G is still good for them. So you can see different regions have very different strategies. One interesting thing about Europe is that it is likely that 3G will go away sooner than 2G, which it was not something we could expect a few years ago. So it's a labyrinth. It's very difficult, and again, I think we made it clear. The only suggestion we can really provide to stay up to speed with the latest trends, with the latest state of the cellular market, is really ask for the support of a trusted advisor. It's a full-time job, and we at Telit we are happy to do it together with our clients.
Excellent. Well, I guess 5G's here, and as a new arrives, out goes the old. Wireless sunsets may involve hard work and investment in the short run, but still over time they more than pay off in increased functionality and the incredible opportunities that come with each technology sunrise. When you're ready to transition to new technologies, reach out to us at Telit. We're here to help. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.